Bloom Filters, the gatekeepers compromise. All right, let's dive right into this explainer with a pretty massive question. How in the world do you check billions of records using only a tiny, microscopic amount of memory? It's honestly one of the foundational challenges in modern systems engineering.
Because storing exact data at that massive scale, it's impossibly expensive. I mean, sure, a standard hash set is incredibly fast, but the memory costs to do that will absolutely bankrupt you. But way back in 1970, Burt and Howard Bloom came up with this brilliant compromise that solves this exact problem, giving us a highly spaced, efficient, probabilistic data structure.
And the absolute genius of it? It never actually tells you yes. It only ever says two things: definitely not, or maybe. That single uncompromising logic is exactly what powers massive databases, your web browser, and content delivery networks all over the world. It works by stopping unnecessary work before it even starts.
Section 1, the billion record problem.
So imagine you're building this massive database. You literally can't hold billions of exact keys in RAM just to check if something exists. But the reality is, most systems don't actually need a perfect 100% accurate answer on the very first try. They just need to avoid those incredibly expensive, slow disk reads or network requests. That is exactly where the Bloom filter comes in. It doesn't store the actual elements, it just stores the evidence that an element might exist.
Section 2. How it works. Bits and hashes.
Now, the core mechanics here are beautifully simple. A Bloom filter really only uses two things: a bit array that starts off completely zeroed out and a few independent hash functions. When we want to insert an element, let's say the string user123, we run it through all those hash functions to get a bunch of index positions. Then we just flip those specific bits in our array to a 1.
If you look at this in actual code, the insertion process is incredibly elegant. You just run a basic loop. For every hash function, you pass in the key, compute the index, and set that bit to 1. That's the whole shebang. It is computationally incredibly cheap, and it happens in constant time no matter how many millions of elements are already sitting in the filter.
And for the lookup operation, we just run that exact same loop. We hash the key again and check those exact same bit positions. Here's the magic. If our code sees that even a single bit is 0, it immediately returns false. The element is definitely absolutely not there. But if all the bits are 1, it returns true, meaning, well, it might exist. That's the only uncertainty.
Moving on to Section 3, inside the architecture.
To get maximum speed out of this, production Bloom filters don't mess around with heavy cryptographic hashes like SHA-256. Security isn't the goal here. Speed and uniform distribution are, so they rely on blazing fast hashes like murmur hash or XX hash. But computing lots of hashes can still eat up your CPU cycles. So engineers use a common optimization called double hashing. The system calculates just 2 base hash functions and uses this little formula to mathematically simulate as many as it needs. Same behavior, way lower CPU cost.
And we know this isn't just a clever hack. Research out of Harvard by Kirsch and Mitzenmacher mathematically proved that this double hashing technique maintains the exact same asymptotic performance and false positive probability as using completely independent hashes, so you get all the benefits while drastically lowering the computational overhead. Most optimizations you'll see are all about reducing that hashing overhead rather than speeding up the lookup itself.
Section 4, false positives explained.
Okay, now we have to confront the elephant in the room. Because different elements can eventually set the exact same bits by pure chance, you will occasionally get a false positive. The filter answers, looks like it's here, but the item isn't actually in your database. However, a false negative? That is mathematically impossible. Think about it. We never, ever erase a bit that was set to 1. So if the filter says, definitely not, you can trust it absolutely.
If we skip the heavy math for a second, the golden rule of configuring a Bloom filter is pretty wild. You only need about 9.6 bits per element to maintain a tiny 1% false positive error rate. To put that into perspective for you, a filter covering 1 billion elements needs roughly 1.2 gigabytes of memory. That is literally nothing compared to storing a billion actual database keys. It's so unbelievably efficient.
Section 5. Real-world industry usage.
Let's look at how the industry applies this ultra-fast security guard at massive scale. In databases like Cassandra and ScyllaDB, Bloom filters sit right in front of the disk. If the filter says, not here, the database skips reading the SS table entirely, which saves massive amounts of disk I/O. Google Chrome uses them to instantly filter malicious URLs right on your device. Akamai uses them to prevent one-hit wonders from cluttering up their web caches. Even Medium uses them to instantly filter out articles you've already read before they generate recommendations.
They really do act as the ultimate first line of defense.
Which brings us to Section 6, Pitfalls and Better Variants.
As amazing as Bloom filters are, they do have some very strict limitations. Mainly, they have a fixed capacity, and you absolutely cannot delete elements. Why? Well, multiple keys might share the same bits, right? So if you try to delete a key by switching its bits back to 0, you might accidentally destroy the only evidence for a completely different key. That would introduce catastrophic false negatives, completely breaking the core promise of the filter. Plus, if you add way more elements than your fixed capacity was originally designed for, your false positive rate is going to spike completely out of control.
So, choosing the right probabilistic structure today depends heavily on your specific update patterns. If you absolutely need deletions, you might swap to a counting Bloom filter, which uses memory-heavy counters instead of single bits. Need even better efficiency? You might look at a Cuckoo filter. It stores tiny fingerprints and actually performs better than a Bloom filter when your target error rate drops under 3%. There are also scalable filters that automatically add layers when they get full, and quotient filters that are heavily optimized for SSD locality.
Section 7. The final takeaway.
To wrap this all up, Bloom filters brilliantly trade perfect accuracy for immense memory savings. They never miss existing data, and they are only occasionally overly optimistic. It's a fantastic trade-off when you have a super expensive operation waiting right after the lookup. Think of it as the fastest possible gatekeeper. It stops bad requests dead in their tracks. But it leaves us with one final, provocative question for your own architecture. If the filter does let a request through and says maybe, what expensive system are you about to ask? Because when you understand what sits behind the gatekeeper, you really start to appreciate how much time and money the simple bit array is saving the internet every single second.